Good evening, night creatures. Tonight, we listen to the history of Poseidon, Lord of the Seas. Part 1. Birth, Darkness, and the War against the Titans. Settle deeper into comfort. Release the tension in your shoulders, your neck, your jaw. Let everything soften, everything relax. We begin at the beginning, in a time before time had meaning, when the cosmos was young and wild, when primordial forces shaped reality with their bare hands. Breathe in, breathe out. Let the ancient world unfold before you. In the beginning was chaos, formless void, and from chaos came Gaia, the earth herself, solid and eternal. And Gaia gave birth to Uranus, the sky, who covered her like a blanket of stars. Together they created the first beings, the Titans, enormous and powerful, the first gods, the ancient ones. Among the Titans was Cronus, youngest and most cunning of Gaia's children. Uranus feared his children, feared their power, and imprisoned them deep within Gaia's body, within the earth itself. Gaia suffered, carrying this burden, and whispered to Cronus, gave him a sickle of adamant, the hardest substance in existence. Rest, as this ancient drama unfolds, slowly, inevitably. When Uranus came to lie with Gaia, as he did every night, spreading himself across the earth, Cronus struck. He castrated his father, cut away his power. Uranus fled, bleeding across the sky, never to return in the same way again. From his blood, spilled into the sea, would eventually be born Aphrodite, goddess of love. But that is another story, for another time. Cronus took his father's throne. He became king of the Titans, ruler of the cosmos. He married his sister Rhea, as the gods often did, and his reign began, the Golden Age, when humans lived without toil or suffering, when the earth gave freely of its bounty. But Cronus carried a secret fear, a whisper in the darkness, a prophecy. Let that fear seep into your awareness, and then release it. Let it drift away. The prophecy said that Cronus would be overthrown by one of his own children, just as he had overthrown Uranus, just as son had overthrown father since the beginning. The cycle would continue, unless Cronus found a way to prevent it. And so, when Rhea grew round with their first child, Cronus made his terrible decision. He would not risk his throne, would not allow the prophecy to unfold. He would take drastic measures, breathe deeply. The sorrow is ancient, distant. It cannot touch you here. Rhea gave birth to a beautiful daughter, Hestia, goddess of the hearth and home, gentle, kind, the firstborn of the Olympians. Rhea held her baby, looked into her eyes, saw divinity reflected there, and wept, because she knew what was coming. Cronus took the infant from her arms and swallowed her whole. Not killed, the gods cannot truly die, but imprisoned, trapped in darkness, in the belly of their father, alive but unreachable, surrounded by crushing pressure and absolute darkness, unable to grow, unable to scream, simply existing in timeless horror. Let this image fade, like shadows before dawn. It is long past, long gone. Rhea begged, pleaded, but Cronus would not relent. When their second child was born, Demeter, goddess of the harvest, of golden grain and growing things, Cronus swallowed her too. She joined her sister in the darkness. Two divine children, imprisoned before they could take their first breath of free air. Then came Hera, tall and regal even as an infant, future queen of the gods. She too was swallowed, vanishing into Cronus's gullet, entombed in her father's belly. 3 daughters, gone. Rhea's heart broke with each loss, but more children were coming. The fates had spun their threads. Destiny could not be avoided. Sink deeper into your bed, your chair, wherever you rest. Feel the support beneath you. Solid, safe. The 4th child was a son. Hades, dark-haired and serious, even as a baby. He would one day rule the underworld, would become Lord of the Dead. But he never saw his first sunrise. Cronus swallowed him, and he joined his sisters in the timeless dark. 4 children, imprisoned. And Rhea felt the 5th child growing within her, felt the divine life stirring. And she knew she could not let this happen again. But what could she do? Cronus was king, was all-powerful. Who could stand against him? Rest, as Rhea plans, as she hopes, as she prepares. The 5th child was born, another son, Poseidon, the child who would one day command all the waters of the world, who would shake the earth with his fury, who would be second only to Zeus among the gods. But in that moment, he was simply a baby, crying his first cry, drawing his first breath. Divine power radiated from him even then, the smell of salt and sea, the promise of storms and ocean depths. Rhea held him, looked at Cronus, and her heart broke once more. She could not save him, could not defy her husband. Not yet. The time was not right. She had to wait, had to sacrifice one more child, to save the last. Feel the tragedy of it, then let it go. Release it into the dark. Cronus took the infant Poseidon. The baby reached toward his mother, eyes wide and confused. And then, darkness, the crushing embrace of his father's throat, the terrible descent into that prison of flesh. And Poseidon joined his siblings, 5 divine children, trapped together in impossible darkness, aware but helpless, powerful but imprisoned. Time meant nothing there. Minutes felt like years, years like minutes. They could not age, could not grow in the normal way, but their consciousness expanded, filled with rage, with longing for freedom, with growing power that had nowhere to go. Breathe, in and out. You are safe. This is only a story, ancient and distant. Poseidon's first experience of existence was darkness, was pressure, was the slow realization that he was trapped, that his father had imprisoned him. He could feel his siblings around him. Hestia's gentle warmth, Demeter's nurturing presence, Hera's fierce pride, Hades's cold acceptance. They were together, at least, not alone in the darkness. And there they remained, for years, for decades, while the world outside continued, while Cronus ruled, while Rhea mourned, until, let anticipation build, soft, gentle, like the first light of dawn. Rhea became pregnant again, the 6th child, the last child. And this time she had a plan. She went to Gaia, to her mother, the earth herself, and together they schemed. When the baby was born, when Zeus first opened his eyes and screamed his fury at the world, Rhea did not bring him to Cronus. Instead, she took a large stone, roughly the size and weight of an infant, and wrapped it in swaddling clothes. She doused it with amniotic fluid, made it seem real. Rest. As the deception unfolds, when Cronus demanded his child, Rhea brought him the stone, And Cronus, in his paranoia and haste, in his certainty that no one would dare deceive him, did not look closely, did not check. He simply swallowed it, felt it settle in his belly alongside his other children, and was satisfied. The infant Zeus was spirited away to the island of Crete, to a deep cave on Mount Ida. There he was raised by nymphs, fed on the milk of the goat Amalthea, protected by the Curetes, warrior spirits who clashed their spears against their shields whenever the baby cried, to mask the sound from Cronus. Years passed, slow, steady, like the growth of mountains. Zeus grew, became strong, became wise, became angry. He learned of his siblings, learned what his father had done, and he swore an oath that shook the foundations of the cave, that he would free them, would take his father's throne, would end the reign of the Titans. Feel yourself sinking deeper into the mattress, into sleep, into the story. When Zeus came of age, tall and powerful, wreathed in storm clouds, eyes flashing with lightning, he went to the ocean, to Metis, the Titaness of wisdom, and she gave him a potion, a mixture that would make Cronus vomit, would force him to disgorge his children. Zeus returned to his father's palace, disguised as a cupbearer, and served Cronus the potion mixed with wine. The Titan king drank deeply, suspected nothing. And then the purging began. Let the images flow, like water, like wine, like liberation. First came the stone that Rhea had given him so long ago. It flew from Cronus's mouth and landed on the earth. At Delphi it would later stand, the omphalos, the navel of the world, marking the center of all things. Then came the children, in reverse order. As things swallowed must be expelled. Hades emerged first, no longer an infant but a fully formed god, dark and terrible, cold as death. He had been imprisoned longest, had suffered most, and his eyes held the chill of eternity. Then Poseidon. Breathe deeply, as the god of the sea takes his first breath of freedom. Poseidon emerged from his father's throat, and the moment his feet touched ground, the moment he drew his first breath of free air, water began to flow. The earth cracked. Springs burst forth. The smell of the ocean filled the air, even though the sea was miles away. He was tall, powerful. His hair was dark and wild like storm waves. His eyes held the depth of the ocean, the green blue of deep water. He looked around, saw the sky for the first time, saw the earth, saw his brother Hades, and in his chest, a rage began to build, like a tsunami gathering strength far out at sea. Then came Hera, regal and furious, already a queen. Then Demeter, smelling of wheat and earth. Then Hestia, gentle but unbroken. The 5 siblings stood together, looked at Cronus, their father, their jailer, and as one, they declared war. Rest, as the cosmos prepares for conflict. Cronus called upon his brothers, the other Titans. Atlas, strongest of all. Hyperion, lord of light. Iapetus, Oceanus, the old gods, the ancient powers. They rallied to his banner, would defend the old order against this new uprising. Zeus went to Tartarus, to the deepest pit, and freed the Cyclopes, the 3 brothers with single eyes in their foreheads. Master craftsmen. They had been imprisoned by Uranus, then by Cronus. They owed Zeus everything. In gratitude, they forged weapons for the 3 brothers, for Zeus, the thunderbolt, lightning incarnate, the power of the storm, for Hades, the helm of invisibility, the power to move unseen through the world. And for Poseidon, let your mind see it, shining, powerful, eternal. The trident, three-pronged spear, forged from the bones of the earth, imbued with the power of the seas. With it, Poseidon could command every drop of water, could summon earthquakes, could split mountains. The moment he closed his hand around its shaft, the ocean responded. Waves rose, tides changed. Every river and stream felt his touch. The war began. The Titanomachy, 10 years of cosmic conflict. Let the sounds of battle fade, become distant, like thunder over far mountains. The gods fought from Mount Olympus, the highest peak in Greece. So high its summit touched the clouds. Zeus hurled lightning, Hades struck from shadows, and Poseidon commanded the seas. He would summon tsunamis, walls of water hundreds of feet high. They would crash against Titan strongholds, washing away armies. The ocean became a weapon. Whirlpools swallowed ships. Storms destroyed supply lines. The very water in the Titans' bodies responded to his call, making them weak, disoriented. But the Titans were powerful, ancient. They had ruled for eons. They would not fall easily. Breathe. Let the conflict wash over you, distant, dreamlike. Mountains crumbled. The sky cracked. The earth itself split open. Volcanoes erupted. Forests burned. The war touched every corner of the world. Mortals cowered, hid in caves, prayed to whatever gods would listen. Year after year, battle after battle. Neither side could gain the upper hand, until Zeus had another idea. He descended to Tartarus again, deeper this time, to the very bottom, where the 100-handed ones were imprisoned. The Hecatoncheires, 3 brothers, each with 100 hands and 50 heads, imprisoned by Uranus for their terrifying appearance, forgotten even by Cronus. Zeus freed them, offered them a place in the new order, and they joined the war. Feel the tide turning, inevitable, like the pull of the moon on water. The 100-handed ones could throw 100 boulders at once, could fight entire armies single-handedly. With them, the tide turned. The Titans began to fall. One by one, they were defeated, captured, cast down. Poseidon fought Atlas personally, the strongest of the Titans. The battle lasted 3 days. The ocean boiled, the earth shook. Finally, Poseidon struck with his trident, sent a wave that knocked Atlas from his feet. Zeus bound him with chains of adamant and decreed his punishment. Atlas would hold up the sky for all eternity. His strength turned into eternal labor. Rest as the war winds down, as victory approaches. Cronus was the last to fall. The 3 brothers faced their father together, Zeus with lightning, Hades with terror, Poseidon with the fury of the sea. Cronus was powerful, had ruled for so long, but he could not stand against his 3 sons, united in purpose, burning with righteous rage. They struck him down, not killed. The gods cannot die, but defeated, diminished, broken. Cronus and the other defeated Titans were cast into Tartarus, into that bottomless pit, so deep that an anvil dropped from the surface would fall for 9 days and 9 nights before striking bottom. There they were chained, guarded by the 100-handed ones, imprisoned just as they had once imprisoned their own children. The cycle had come full circle. Son had overthrown father, as was foretold, as was destined. as would always be. Breathe deeply. The war is over. Peace, at last. The three brothers stood together, victorious. The Titans were defeated. The cosmos needed new rulers. But who would rule what? They decided to draw lots, to let fate decide. 3 straws, or perhaps 3 stones, cast into a helmet. And they drew. Let your breathing slow, as fate unfolds. Zeus drew the sky. He would rule the heavens, would sit as king of gods and men, would wield the lightning. His would be the highest throne, first among equals. Hades drew the underworld, the realm of the dead, dark and cold and necessary. He would rule the shades, judge the souls, maintain the boundary between life and death. He did not protest his lot. Death suited him. He had been closest to it for so long. And Poseidon, feel the rightness of it, the inevitability. Poseidon drew the seas, all the waters of the world, every ocean, every sea, every river and lake and stream, every spring and fountain, every drop of rain. All answered to him. All were his domain. The moment it was decided, the moment the lot was cast, the seas responded. Waves rose in celebration. Storms gathered and dispersed in patterns of joy. Fish leapt from the water. Dolphins sang. The ocean knew its master and was glad. Poseidon descended beneath the waves to the Aegean Sea, to a place where the continental shelf dropped away into impossible depths. And there, in the darkness, in the crushing pressure of the deep, he built his palace. Let your imagination see it. Shimmering, impossible, beautiful. Walls of living coral, pale pink and deep purple and pure white. Pillars of pearl, each one the size of a temple column, formed over centuries by patient oysters. Floors of polished abalone, shimmering with rainbow light. Ceilings encrusted with sea jewels, sapphires and aquamarines, and opals washed down from terrestrial mountains, transformed by the sea's embrace. Great halls where whales could swim through, smaller chambers decorated with treasures from 1,000 shipwrecks, gold and silver, ancient artifacts, the accumulated wealth of the deep. And in the throne room, a seat carved from a single massive black pearl. And Poseidon sat upon it, trident in hand, crown of pearls and coral upon his brow, and looked up through the clear water at the world above. Rest now. Sink into the comfort of the deep, where all is still, all is quiet. The Nereids came to him, the 50 daughters of the sea god Nereus. They were beautiful beyond description, each one unique, each one a different aspect of the sea. Calm waters, stormy seas, sandy beaches, rocky coasts. They danced through his halls, sang songs of the deep, welcomed their new lord. And among them was one, the most beautiful, the one whose eyes reflected the deepest ocean, whose voice was like waves on a moonlit shore. Her name was Amphitrite. Let the first hour end, in the depths, in the palace, in the quiet before new stories begin. Poseidon, Earthshaker, ruler of the seas, had claimed his throne, had taken his place among the great powers of the cosmos. The ocean was his, and he was the ocean's. Breathe, deep, slow. Let the ancient story settle into your bones. The war was won, the throne was claimed, but Poseidon's story was just beginning. Drift now, float in dark water. Part 2 awaits, but there is no rush. Sleep may claim you first, and that would be well. These stories are patient. They have waited millennia. They can wait a little longer. Rest. Part 2. Love longing, and the rivalry for cities. The darkness is complete, soft, welcoming. You float suspended in warmth, in safety, in the space between waking and dreaming. The ocean rocks you gently, back and forth, like a mother with her child. Poseidon sat upon his throne beneath the waves, master of all the seas, and he was lonely. Let that loneliness touch you, then dissolve. You are not alone. You are safe. The palace was beautiful. The Nereids were lovely. His power was vast and unquestionable. But power is cold comfort. Beauty is poor company. He wanted more. He wanted love. He wanted a queen to sit beside him, to share his throne, to rule the seas at his side. And so his eyes turned to the Nereids who danced through his halls, and among them all, Amphitrite stood out, like the full moon outshines the stars. She was tall, graceful. Her hair flowed like midnight currents. Her eyes were the deep blue-green of tropical waters, her voice like the singing of dolphins. When she danced, the water itself danced with her. When she sang, the whales fell silent to listen. Breathe, slow, deep, as the story of first love unfolds. Poseidon watched her, day after day, watched the way she moved, the way she laughed with her sisters, the way she combed her hair with a shell comb, sitting on a rock in the deep. And his divine heart, so vast, so powerful, felt something it had never felt before. Want, need, love. He approached her one day as she danced with her sisters in the coral gardens. The other Nereids scattered like fish before a shark. They knew. They could feel his intensity, his desire. This was not a god to be trifled with. But Amphitrite stood her ground, looked up at him, at the Lord of the Seas, and felt fear, not fear of harm. The gods do not harm so simply, but fear of being consumed, of losing herself, of becoming merely an appendage to his power. She was a Nereid, a daughter of the sea, free and wild and herself. She did not wish to be a god's wife, did not wish to be owned, to be possessed. Rest as she makes her choice. When Poseidon declared his love, when he asked her to be his queen, Amphitrite did something remarkable, something almost unheard of in the age of gods. She said no, and she fled. Feel her flight, desperate, determined, free. She swam, faster than she had ever swum, away from Poseidon's palace, away from the Aegean. She swam west, past Greece, past Italy, past the pillars of Heracles, into the great Atlantic, to the very edges of the world, to the mountains of Atlas, where her father Nereus had a hidden grotto, a place of safety, of sanctuary. There she hid, among the underwater caves, in the darkness, where she thought the Earthshaker could not find her. And Poseidon was distraught. Let the god's sorrow wash over you, distant, dreamlike, fading. He had never been rejected before, never been denied. He was a god, one of the great three, second only to Zeus, who would dare refuse him. But Amphitrite had dared, and rather than anger him, though anger came later, it made him want her more. She was not like the others, not like the nymphs who threw themselves at gods, not like the mortals who trembled and obeyed. She had a will of her own, strength of her own. And he had to have her. He sent messengers throughout the ocean, every sea creature that could swim, every deity of river and stream. He commanded them, find Amphitrite, bring her back, convince her, breathe, as the search unfolds. across the ancient seas. Dolphins swam in pods. Whales sang their deep songs, calling for Amphitrite, searching every current, every underwater cave, every hidden grotto. But she remained hidden, silent, determined. Weeks passed. Months. Poseidon grew desperate, then angry, then desperate again. The seas reflected his moods. Storms arose for no reason. Calm waters turned turbulent. Sailors prayed, sacrificed, wondered what they had done to offend the god. Until finally, one messenger succeeded. A dolphin named Delphinus, clever and eloquent, found Amphitrite's hiding place. Let the scene unfold, gentle, persuasive, inevitable. Delphinus did not simply demand her return, did not threaten or command. Instead, he spoke of Poseidon's loneliness, of his genuine love, of how the god paced his palace halls, how he sat upon his throne staring at nothing, how he had barely eaten, barely slept, since she left. He spoke of the honor, of being queen of the seas, of ruling beside the earth shaker, of the power, the glory, the immortality formalized and celebrated. But most of all, Delphinus spoke of love, genuine, deep, transformative. He convinced Amphitrite that Poseidon did not wish to possess her, but to cherish her, to honor her, to love her as an equal. And slowly, Amphitrite's heart softened. Rest, as resistance melts, as walls come down. She agreed to return, not as a captive, but as a willing bride. She would be Poseidon's queen, would sit beside him, would rule the seas at his side. The journey back was slow, stately, ceremonial. Delphinus swam beside her, and as they traveled, sea creatures gathered, forming a procession, whales and dolphins, schools of fish that flashed silver in the sunlight, sea turtles and rays, all celebrated her return. When they reached Poseidon's palace, the god was waiting, standing at the entrance, trident in hand but lowered, not as a weapon but as a staff. His eyes, when he saw her, held relief, joy, love. He had not known he could feel this way, had not known that even a god could be vulnerable, could fear loss, could need. Their wedding was magnificent, beyond description. Let the images flow, like watercolors, blending, beautiful, dreamlike. Every creature of the sea attended. The Nereids danced. Triton, Poseidon's son from a previous liaison, blew his conch shell. The sound echoed across the ocean. Whales sang in harmony. Dolphins leapt and spun. Even the usually solitary octopi came, bringing gifts of shells and pearls. The Olympians descended from above. Zeus came with Hera. Athena came. Apollo and Artemis. Even Hades rose from the underworld for the occasion. The gods rarely all gathered. But this was special. This was a wedding of equals, of true love, rare among the divine. Amphitrite wore a gown woven from sea foam, ephemeral and eternal. A crown of pearls and sea flowers adorned her hair. She was radiant, beautiful, and finally, willing. Poseidon had never looked happier. The stern god, the earth shaker, the terror of sailors, smiled, truly smiled, and for a moment, the ocean itself seemed to smile with him. The waters grew calm. The light penetrated deeper than usual. Everything was right. Sink deeper into the warmth of this moment, of joy, of union. They were married, bound by oaths that even gods could not break. Amphitrite took her place on the throne beside Poseidon's, and she became queen of the seas, the Nereid elevated to goddess, ruler alongside her husband, honored, respected, loved. Together they had children. Triton was legitimized. Poseidon's son became their son, half man, half fish. His upper body was human, muscular and strong, but from the waist down, a fish's tail, powerful and scaled. He could swim faster than any creature, could dive deeper than even his father, and he carried a conch shell, which he would blow to calm or raise the waters. Its sound could be heard across the entire ocean. Then came Rhode, their daughter, beautiful and wild. She would later marry Helios, the sun god, and their children would found cities on the island of Rhodes, which bore her name, and Benthesichim, another daughter, queen of the deep, who married a mortal king and taught him the ways of the sea. Rest, as the family grows, as years pass in divine contentment. For a time, Poseidon was faithful. For a time, he was content. Amphitrite had everything she could want: a husband who loved her, children who honored her, a kingdom beneath the waves, power, respect, joy. But time works differently for gods. Years become decades, decades become centuries, and gods, especially male gods, were never known for their constancy. Poseidon's eye began to wander. Let this knowledge come softly, without judgment. The gods were not human, did not follow human rules. There was a mortal woman, Medusa, beautiful beyond measure, a priestess in Athena's temple. Her hair was long and dark, her eyes were bright. She had sworn vows of celibacy, dedicated herself to the virgin goddess. But Poseidon saw her and wanted her, and when Poseidon wanted something, he took it. Breathe. As the tragedy unfolds, he came to her in Athena's temple. There, in that sacred space, he had his way with her. Whether she was willing is lost to time. The old stories are unclear. Some say she welcomed him. Some say she had no choice. The truth, like so much, is buried beneath millennia. But Athena saw, and she was furious. Her temple, defiled. Her priestess, violated. Her vows, broken. But Athena could not punish Poseidon. He was too powerful, an Olympian, her uncle. So she punished Medusa instead. Let the injustice of it touch you, then release. The old gods were not always just. Athena cursed Medusa, transformed her. Her beautiful hair became writhing serpents. Her lovely face became terrible to behold. Her eyes gained a terrible power. Anyone who looked directly into them would turn to stone, frozen forever, living marble. Medusa became a monster, a gorgon, exiled to a remote island, alone, feared, hated, hunted. But from her union with Poseidon came 2 children, though they would not be born until her death. Rest, as time moves forward, as tragedies compound. Years later, the hero Perseus would come, would slay Medusa, would cut off her head, and from her severed neck, from her divine blood, sprang Poseidon's children. First, Pegasus, the winged horse, white as sea foam, beautiful and wild and free. He would serve the Muses, would create the Hippocrene spring with a strike of his hoof, would eventually carry Zeus's thunderbolts, Poseidon's son, born of tragedy, but glorious nonetheless. And Chrysor, the golden warrior, whose fate is less known but no less divine. Breathe. Let the sorrow and beauty mingle, like salt water and fresh. Amphitrite knew of Poseidon's infidelities, How could she not? His children appeared across the Mediterranean, demigods and monsters, heroes and terrors, each one a reminder that her husband's love, while real, was not exclusive. But she was a goddess, a queen. She maintained her dignity, ruled at his side, raised their children, and endured. As divine wives had always endured, Poseidon fathered many children. So many. Let them pass through your mind like schools of fish, glimpsed and gone. Polyphemus, the Cyclops, one-eyed giant who tended sheep on a remote island. He would one day encounter Odysseus. But that story comes later. Orion, the great hunter, tall as a mountain, who walked across the ocean floor with his head above the waves. He hunted with Artemis until he boasted he could kill every beast on earth. And Gaia sent a scorpion to kill him. Both became constellations, forever chasing each other across the night sky. Theseus, or so Poseidon claimed, the hero of Athens, raised by King Aegeus, but carrying Poseidon's divine blood. He would slay the Minotaur, unite Attica, become the greatest king Athens ever knew, and others, so many others, scattered across the Greek world. Everywhere Poseidon's influence touched, which was everywhere the sea reached, which was everywhere. Sink deeper as we turn from love to rivalry, from family to conflict. For Poseidon desired not just love, not just children. He desired honor, worship, recognition. He wanted cities to call him patron, wanted temples built in his name, wanted to be first, to be most important, to be king, at least somewhere, if not everywhere. And this desire would lead him into conflict with his niece, Athena, goddess of wisdom, and their rivalry would shape the ancient world. Rest as the scene shifts, as we travel to a new city, not yet named. In Attica, there was a settlement, a small but growing town on a rocky outcrop overlooking the sea. It was strategically placed, defensible, with a natural harbor. It would clearly become important, wealthy, powerful. The people of this town needed a patron deity, someone to protect them, to bless their endeavors, to receive their sacrifices and prayers. Both Poseidon and Athena wanted this honor. Both claimed the city, and neither would back down. Feel the tension building, like a storm on the horizon. The gods agreed to a contest. Each would offer a gift to the city. The people would choose which gift was better, and that god would become their patron. It was a fair solution, democratic even, but both gods were confident, certain of victory. The day came. The people gathered on the rocky hill, the Acropolis, that would one day hold the Parthenon. They waited, eager, nervous, about to witness a contest between gods. Poseidon went first. Let the earth shake. Feel it in your bones. Distant. Safe. He raised his trident high. The sun glinted off its 3 prongs, and with all his might, with all the power of the Earthshaker, he struck the rock. The Acropolis split. A fissure opened, and from the stone, water gushed forth. A spring, a fountain, water from solid rock. A miracle. The people gasped, murmured, impressed. This was clearly divine power, to bring water from stone, in a land where water was precious. This was a magnificent gift. But then they tasted it, and their faces fell. Salt water. The spring was salt water, undrinkable, useless for crops. good only to demonstrate Poseidon's power over the seas, but providing no practical benefit to the city. Breathe, as hope turns to disappointment. Poseidon saw their reaction, and his pride was stung. But the contest was not over. Athena had not yet given her gift. The goddess of wisdom stepped forward. She did not raise a weapon, did not strike the earth. Instead, she knelt and placed something in the soil. Watch as it grows. Impossible, beautiful, practical. An olive tree, the first olive tree in the world. It sprouted, grew, matured in moments. Its silver-green leaves rustled in the breeze. Its roots dug deep into the rocky soil. And it bore fruit, ripe olives, dark and rich. Athena stood and spoke, her voice clear and calm. This tree will give you food, oil for your lamps, wood for your buildings. It will live for centuries, will provide for generation after generation. It is sustainable, renewable, wise. The people looked at the tree, looked at the salt water spring, and the choice was clear. They chose Athena. Rest, as Poseidon's rage builds, like a tsunami gathering far out at sea. The city was named Athens, in her honor. They built her a temple, the Parthenon, one of the most magnificent structures the world would ever see. They carved her statue, towering, covered in gold. They sacrificed to her, honored her, loved her, and Poseidon was furious. In his rage, he flooded the Thracian plain. The waters rose, crops drowned, people fled to higher ground. The earth shook with his fury. Athens learned to fear earthquakes, the earth-shaker's revenge, his reminder of what could have been. But eventually, after days of destruction, his rage cooled. He accepted the loss, withdrew his flood, allowed the waters to recede, breathe, as anger gives way to acceptance. Eventually, always, eventually, Athens would always honor Athena first. But they also built Poseidon a temple on the same Acropolis, the Erechtheion, where the marks of his trident in the rock could still be seen, where the salt spring still flowed. They gave him sacrifices, honored him, because even though he was not their primary patron, he was still Poseidon, still the earth shaker, and it was foolish to ignore him. The rivalry continued for centuries. Athens and the sea god, a complicated relationship, respectful but wary, honoring but not loving. Poseidon won other cities, other contests. Let these victories soothe the sting of defeat. Corinth was his, sitting on the isthmus between two seas, the perfect city for the ocean god. They built him magnificent temples, held games in his honor. The Isthmian Games, second only to the Olympics, chariot races and wrestling and foot races, all dedicated to Poseidon. Troezen honored him, where Theseus was born and raised. They understood. The sea was everything: trade, food, power. They gave Poseidon his due, and many coastal cities, fishing villages, port towns, islands, all knew. If you lived by the sea, you honored the sea god. You sacrificed your finest bulls, poured wine into the waves, prayed for calm waters and good winds. Because Poseidon, whether he loved you or not, controlled your fate. Sink now into the second hour's end. Poseidon, god of love and rage, of victory and defeat, of power constrained only by other powers. The ocean rocks you, gentle now. The storm has passed. The contest is over. There will be other battles, other stories. But for now, rest, drift, like kelp in slow currents, like a boat on calm waters, safe, protected, held by the eternal sea. Part 3 awaits, but sleep pulls at you, strong, irresistible. Let yourself sink. There is no rush. These stories have waited thousands of years. They can wait a little longer. The ocean is patient, eternal, deep. And so is rest. Part 3. Wrath, Vengeance, and the Trojan War. Deeper now, so deep, beyond light, beyond sound, only the pressure of water, the embrace of darkness, the eternal stillness of the abyss. You are floating, suspended, safe in the crushing depths where nothing can harm you, where all is quiet, all is peace. Breathe, slow, deep, like the great whales in their migrations. Poseidon's rage was legendary. Among all the Olympians, among all the gods who ever were, none held grudges with such intensity, such patience, such terrible persistence as the Earthshaker. When Poseidon was wronged, he did not forget. He did not forgive. He waited, like the sea waits, and when the time was right, he struck, like a tsunami, devastating, complete, final, and one of his greatest grudges, one that would echo through the ages, shape the course of the Trojan War. Damn a hero to 10 years of wandering began with an insult, a simple refusal to pay a debt. Let your mind drift backward through time, to the founding of Troy, to when the towers of Ilium first rose toward the sky. Rest as the ancient story unfolds. Long before the war, before Helen's face launched 1,000 ships, before Achilles and Hector fought beneath the walls, Troy was being built. King Laomedon, grandson of Dardanus, founder of the city, wanted walls so strong that no army could breach them, walls that would stand forever. But such walls required divine help, required the hands of gods, and as fate would have it, Poseidon and Apollo, god of the sun, god of music and prophecy, were available. They had angered Zeus. The stories vary on how. Perhaps they plotted against him. Perhaps they simply spoke out of turn. The gods were often in conflict, petty and proud. But whatever the cause, Zeus had punished them. For 1 year, they would serve a mortal king, would labor as mortals labor, would know humility, would be reminded that Zeus was king, and they were not. Breathe, feel the weight of divine pride, forced to bow. And so Poseidon and Apollo came to Troy, disguised as mortals, and offered their services to Laomedon. "We will build you walls," they said, "walls that will never fall, that will stand for 1,000 years, that will make Troy the greatest city in the world." And Laomedon agreed, set the price, promised payment in gold, in goods, in honor. The gods began their work. Let the image form slowly, like dawn over water. For a full year, they labored. Poseidon raised the stones, used his divine strength to lift blocks that 100 men could not move, placed them with precision, building foundations so deep they reached bedrock, so strong they merged with the earth itself. Apollo laid the stones, used his perfect eye, his sense of proportion and beauty. Each stone fit perfectly to its neighbor, no mortar needed, the pressure and precision holding them in place. The walls rose, higher, higher, beautiful and terrible, impregnable. Some stories say that Aeacus, a mortal hero, helped them, and that the section he built, being mortal work, would be the weak point, the place where the city could eventually fall. But that is uncertain. What is certain is this. The walls were magnificent, the finest ever built. Troy stood protected, defended by the work of gods. Laomedon should have been grateful, should have honored the bargain. But when the year was done, when Poseidon and Apollo revealed themselves, when they asked for their payment, Laomedon refused. Feel the shock, the insult, the sheer audacity. Poseidon stood before the mortal king, trident in hand, eyes blazing with the fury of the sea. You dare refuse payment to a god. But Laomedon was arrogant. Perhaps he thought the walls would protect him even from divine wrath. Perhaps he thought, what can they do? The work is done. They cannot unbuild it. He mocked them, drove them from his city, threatened them with chains if they did not leave. And Poseidon did not forget. Breathe, as rage becomes a seed, planted deep, waiting to grow. He could not destroy the walls. They were his own work, and Poseidon took pride in his craftsmanship. But he could punish the city in other ways. He sent a sea monster, a beast from the deepest depths, massive, terrible. It rose from the Aegean, crawled onto the beaches, began to devour the people of Troy, farmers, fishermen, children. Nothing was safe. Nothing was sacred. The monster came every day, regular as the tide, unstoppable as the ocean. Troy lived in terror. Laomedon consulted oracles, sought answers, and the answer came. Cold, merciless, inevitable. Only the sacrifice of his daughter, Princess Hesione, could appease the monster, could save the city. Rest, as the tragedy compounds, as pride leads to suffering. Laomedon had no choice. His arrogance had doomed his child. Hesione was chained to the rocks, left as an offering. The princess dressed in white, like a bride, waiting for a groom of scales and teeth. But then came Hercules, the great hero. On one of his labors, he saw the princess, saw the monster, and offered a bargain. I will slay the beast, but you must pay me. Give me your immortal horses, the ones bred from the mares that Zeus gave your father. Laomedon agreed, desperate, willing to promise anything. Heracles fought the monster. For 3 days the battle raged. The beach ran red. The waters churned. Finally, the hero prevailed, slew the beast, saved the princess, saved Troy, and asked for his payment. Let your breath catch, knowing what comes next. And Laomedon refused, again. The arrogant king, who had already refused to pay gods, refused to pay a hero, refused to honor his word. Heracles left, but he too did not forget. He would return, with an army, would sack Troy, would kill Laomedon and all his sons, all except one, young Priam, who would be spared, would become king, would rebuild what was destroyed. But Poseidon's anger ran deeper, lasted longer. Sink into the depths of grudges, ancient, patient, eternal. Years passed, decades. Laomedon died, Priam ruled, Troy prospered. The insult faded from mortal memory, but gods do not forget. And when Priam's son Paris, beautiful and foolish Paris, stole Helen from Sparta, when the Greek fleet assembled, when war came to Troy, Poseidon smiled. His revenge, long delayed, would finally come. Breathe as war clouds gather, as fate unfolds. The Trojan War, 10 years of siege, of battle beneath high walls, of heroes living and dying, of songs that would echo through eternity. The Greeks came in their 1,000 ships, led by Agamemnon, king of Mycenae. They brought Achilles, greatest warrior who ever lived. They brought Ajax, giant and powerful. Odysseus, clever and resourceful. Diomedes, fierce and brave. All the heroes of Greece, united to retrieve Helen, to punish Troy, to win glory. And Poseidon. Poseidon sided with the Greeks. He could not breach the walls. They were his own work, too strong, too perfect. But he could help in other ways. Feel the ocean stir, responding to its master's will. He kept the seas calm for Greek ships, ensured their supply lines stayed open. When storms threatened, he turned them aside. When the Greeks needed to cross the Aegean, he made the journey smooth, safe, easy. He stirred courage in Greek hearts, appeared to them in dreams, whispered strategies, inspired them to fight harder, to endure longer. The war dragged on, year after year. Men died by the thousands. Heroes fell. Patroclus, Achilles' beloved companion, killed by Hector. Achilles himself, greatest of all warriors, killed by Paris's arrow. Guided by Apollo, into his only weak point, his heel. And still Troy stood, protected by those perfect walls, protected by the gods who favored them. Apollo, Aphrodite, Ares, they aided Troy, balanced Poseidon's help to the Greeks. The war might have lasted forever, stalemated, endless, until everyone died of old age. But then Odysseus had an idea. Rest, as cunning triumphs where strength could not. The wooden horse, a stratagem, a trick. The Greeks would pretend to leave, would sail away, abandoning the siege. But they would leave behind a gift, a massive wooden horse, an offering to the gods, a monument to their defeat. And inside, hidden in its belly, would be warriors, the best of the Greeks, Odysseus himself, ready to emerge when night fell, to open the gates, to let the army in. It was brilliant, deceptive, perfect. And it worked, breathed, as Troy falls, as walls finally fail. The Trojans debated. Cassandra, Priam's daughter, who could see the future, warned them, begged them not to bring it inside. But she was cursed to speak truth that no one believed. They ignored her. Laocoon, a priest, also warned them, said he feared Greeks even bearing gifts. He threw a spear at the horse, tried to prove it was hollow. But Poseidon sent sea serpents. They emerged from the waves, crawled across the beach, wrapped around Laocoon and his sons, crushed them, killed them. A sign. The Trojans thought that the gods were angry at the insult to the horse. They brought it inside, through the gates, past the walls, into the heart of Troy. That night, while the city celebrated, while they drank and feasted, believing the war was over, the Greek warriors emerged, opened the gates. The Greek army, which had only pretended to sail away, poured in. Troy burned. Let the flames rise in your mind, then fade, like embers dying. The slaughter was complete. King Priam, killed at Zeus's altar, where he had taken refuge, cut down while praying. Hector's infant son, Astyanax, thrown from the walls, so he could never grow up to avenge his father. The Trojan men, killed. The women, enslaved, taken as prizes, distributed among the Greeks. Helen, cause of the war, returned to Menelaus, the face that launched 1,000 ships, going home. Troy, burned to ashes, the great city, the impregnable fortress, reduced to rubble, its towers fallen, its people dead or enslaved, its glory ended. And Poseidon was satisfied. Laomedon's insult, avenged. The debt, paid in blood and fire. The grudge, finally settled. But then came an offense against Poseidon himself. Feel the shift, from old revenge to fresh anger. In the chaos of Troy's fall, a Greek warrior named Ajax, not the great Ajax, but the lesser Ajax of Locris, committed a terrible crime. He found Cassandra, the princess who could see the future. She had taken refuge in Athena's temple, clinging to the goddess's statue, seeking sanctuary, and Ajax, drunk on victory, mad with battle fury, assaulted her there, in the temple, in sacred space, violating both the princess and the goddess's sanctuary. The gods were outraged. Athena, especially, was furious. Her temple, defiled. Her suppliant, violated. She who had helped the Greeks throughout the war, she who had championed them, felt betrayed, insulted, enraged. She went to Poseidon, her old rival, the god whose city she had won, and she asked for his help. Breathe, as old enemies unite against a common offense. Poseidon agreed, gladly. The Greeks had won. Troy had fallen. His revenge was complete. And now they had offended the gods themselves. They deserved punishment, deserved to know. That victory did not mean they could do as they pleased. The Greek fleet set sail, heading home, victorious, laden with treasure, with enslaved Trojans, with spoils beyond measure. They had won the greatest war the world had ever seen. They thought themselves invincible. And then the storm hit. Rest, as divine fury manifests, as the sea becomes weapon, as water becomes death. Poseidon sent the greatest storm in history, or perhaps Athena sent it, with Poseidon's permission, with his enhancement. The stories disagree, but the result was the same. The sky turned black, lightning split the heavens, thunder shook the very air, waves rose, higher than the masts of ships, higher than mountains. They crashed down, again, again, relentless, unstoppable, divine. Ships were scattered, driven onto rocks, dashed to pieces. Hundreds of ships, that had sailed to Troy together, that had fought side by side for 10 years, destroyed in a single night. Men drowned. Heroes who had survived a decade of war, who had fought Hector and Paris and the greatest warriors of Troy, died screaming in the dark water, pulled down by their armor, by the very bronze that had protected them in battle. Ajax the Lesser, the one who had committed the offense, managed to cling to a rock as his ship went down. He held on, survived the waves, and in his pride, in his arrogance, he shouted, "I have survived. Despite the will of the gods, I am stronger than their anger. Breathe, as pride precedes destruction." Poseidon heard, the god, who had just destroyed an entire fleet, who had drowned hundreds of men, raised his trident and struck the rock, split it in two. Ajax fell into the raging waters, and this time there was no rock to cling to, no salvation. He drowned, screaming, as Poseidon ensured he would. The storm continued for days. The Greek fleet scattered across the Mediterranean, some ships driven to Libya, to Egypt, to the far corners of the known world. Few made it home quickly. Most wandered, lost, for years. And among them, Odysseus, clever Odysseus, king of Ithaca, who had devised the wooden horse, who had ended the war. He survived the storm. His ship made it through, battered, but intact. He began the journey home, to his island kingdom, to his wife Penelope, to his son Telemachus. It should have taken weeks, perhaps a month or two. It would take 10 years, sink deeper, as new revenge begins, as the cycle continues. Because Odysseus made a terrible mistake, the mistake that would define his fate, that would doom him to a decade of wandering after the storm. Needing supplies, he stopped at an island, a place of shepherds and giant one-eyed monsters, the Cyclops. He and his men found a cave, full of cheese and sheep. They waited for the owner, hoping to trade, to ask for hospitality, as was the custom. The owner returned, Polyphemus, son of Poseidon, a Cyclops, giant, one eye in the center of his forehead, strong enough to lift boulders. He drove his sheep into the cave, rolled a massive stone across the entrance, trapping the men inside. And then he saw them rest. As the story unfolds, the tale every Greek child knew. Polyphemus was not hospitable. The Cyclops did not follow civilized customs. He grabbed 2 of Odysseus's men, dashed their heads against the rocks, ate them raw, then slept, content, full. Odysseus and his remaining men, trapped, horrified, knew they had to escape. But how? The stone was too heavy to move. If they killed the Cyclops, they would be sealed in forever. Odysseus, ever clever, had a plan. The next day, when Polyphemus asked his name, Odysseus said, "Nobody. My name is Nobody." That night, Odysseus got the Cyclops drunk, on strong wine. The giant had never tasted such wine, drank deeply, became intoxicated, fell asleep. And Odysseus, with his men, took a wooden stake, the trunk of an olive tree, sharpened it, heated it in the fire until it glowed red, and drove it into the Cyclops' single eye. Polyphemus screamed, roared, stumbled around his cave, blind. In agony, the other Cyclops, hearing his cries, came to his cave, asked what was wrong. "Who has hurt you?" They called. "Nobody!" Polyphemus screamed. "Nobody has hurt me. Nobody has blinded me." The other Cyclops, confused, left him alone, thinking he was mad, or that the gods had struck him. Breathe, as escape comes near, as pride prepares its trap. The next morning, Polyphemus, blind, still had to let his sheep out to graze. He rolled the stone aside, sat in the entrance, felt each sheep as it passed, to make sure no men escaped. But Odysseus, clever Odysseus, had tied his men to the underside of the sheep, hanging there, hidden. The blind Cyclops felt the sheep's backs, but not their bellies, and the men escaped. They ran to their ship, pushed off, began to row away, safe, free, victorious. And then Odysseus made his fatal mistake. In his pride, in his need for glory, he couldn't stay silent, couldn't leave as nobody. He had to let the Cyclops know, had to claim his victory. He stood in the ship as they rowed away and shouted back, "Cyclops, if anyone asks who blinded you, tell them it was Odysseus, son of Laertes, king of Ithaca. That is who bested you. Rest, as the curse takes shape, as fate is sealed." Polyphemus, hearing this, grabbed a massive boulder, threw it toward the voice, nearly crushed the ship. But they rowed harder, faster, got away. And then Polyphemus prayed. He stood on the shore, blood and tears streaming from his ruined eye socket, raised his hands to the sky, to the sea, and called upon his father. "Poseidon, Earthshaker, Lord of the seas, my father, hear me. This man, Odysseus of Ithaca, has blinded me. Your son has destroyed my eye, has mocked me. Punish him, I beg you. Let him never reach home, or if he must, let him arrive late. All his companions dead, on a foreign ship, to find trouble in his house. And Poseidon heard his son's prayer. Breathe, as the god's attention turns, as the hunt begins." From that moment, Odysseus was cursed. Poseidon, who had helped the Greeks, who had ensured their victory at Troy, now turned against one of them, the cleverest, the one who had won the war. The Earthshaker pursued him across the Mediterranean for 10 long years. Every time Odysseus tried to sail home, Poseidon sent storms, blew him off course, destroyed his ships, scattered his men. He landed on the island of Aeolus, god of the winds, was given a bag containing all the adverse winds, told to only release them when safe. But his men, thinking it contained treasure, opened it. The winds escaped, blew them back to where they started. He landed on the island of the Laestrygonians, cannibal giants. They destroyed 11 of his 12 ships, killed most of his men. He landed on Aea, island of Circe. The witch, she turned his men into pigs. He had to stay a year, win her favor, convince her to change them back. He descended to the underworld to consult the prophet Tiresias, to ask how he could appease Poseidon. The answer, only time. only suffering, only complete humility. Feel yourself drifting as the wandering continues, endless, exhausting. He encountered the sirens, whose song lured sailors to their deaths. He had himself tied to the mast, listened to their song, survived. He had to pass between Scylla and Charybdis, a X-headed monster and a whirlpool. He lost 6 men to Scylla, 1 for each head, but survived. His men, hungry, exhausted, landed on the island of the sun god Helios, where sacred cattle grazed. Odysseus warned them, "Do not touch the cattle," but he slept, and his men, starving, killed and ate them. Helios was furious, demanded Zeus punish them. Zeus sent a thunderbolt, destroyed the ship, killed all the men. Only Odysseus survived, clinging to wreckage. He washed up on Ogygia, island of Calypso. A nymph who fell in love with him, kept him there for 7 years, promised him immortality if he would stay. But he refused, longed for home, for his wife, for mortal life. Finally, after 10 years, after losing every ship, every companion, after suffering every hardship the gods could devise, Athena intervened, convinced Zeus, who ordered Calypso to let him go. Breathe, as the end approaches, as home comes near. Odysseus built a raft, set sail, but Poseidon, still angry, sent one last storm, destroyed the raft, nearly drowned him. He washed up on Scheria, land of the Phaeacians, a kind people. They listened to his story, gave him a ship, sailed him home to Ithaca. He arrived unconscious, alone, on a stranger's ship, after 20 years away, 10 at Troy, 10 wandering, everything Polyphemus had prayed for. Fulfilled, every word of the curse, made real. And when he finally reached home, he found his house full of suitors, men trying to marry his wife, thinking him dead, eating his food, courting Penelope, disrespecting his son. But that is another story. Rest now, as the 3rd hour ends, as Poseidon's vengeance concludes, the god's anger, eventually, cooled. The debt was paid, the offense punished. Odysseus had suffered enough, had learned humility, had learned that even the cleverest mortal was nothing before divine power. And so the Earthshaker turned his attention elsewhere, to other matters, other slights, other revenge. Such was the nature of Poseidon, patient in anger, terrible in vengeance, but not infinite. Even gods tire. Eventually, even grudges end. Given enough time, enough suffering, enough blood. Sink now, into the depths, where all stories dissolve, where all conflicts fade, where only the eternal ocean remains. Unchanging, infinite, deep. Rest. The war is over. The wandering ended. Part 4 waits. But sleep is close now. So close. Let it take you. Let the ocean embrace you. Safe. Protected. Home. Part 4. Legacy, transformation, and the eternal sea. The deepest dark. The final depth. Where no light has ever reached. Where pressure is absolute. Where silence is complete. You have descended, through layers of story, through centuries of myth, and now you rest, at the very bottom, where the ancient things sleep, where the first stories were born, where everything, eventually, returns. Breathe, barely, like the slow metabolism of deep-sea creatures, like time itself, slowing, stopping, becoming nothing. Poseidon endured, as the ocean endures, unchanging, eternal, while the world above transformed, again and again and again. Let the centuries flow over you, like currents, gentle, inevitable, eroding all sharp edges, smoothing all rough stones. After the Trojan War, after the Age of Heroes, the world changed. Bronze gave way to iron. The great kingdoms fell. Mycenae, Pylos, Tyrins, all destroyed, all buried. The palaces burned, the Linear B tablets, recording their stories, baked hard in the fires, preserved by accident, to be deciphered millennia later. The Greeks called it the Dark Age, centuries where little is known, where civilization seemed to retreat, where writing was forgotten, where the great works were lost. But the gods remained. The stories continued, passed down, mouth to ear, parent to child, around fires, in the darkness, keeping the old ways alive. Rest. As time flows, as generations rise and fall, as everything changes, and nothing changes. Among Poseidon's children, scattered across the Mediterranean world, one deserves special remembrance. Theseus, the hero of Athens, the king who would define an age. The story goes that King Aegeus of Athens, desperate for an heir, went to Delphi. The oracle told him, in riddling words, not to unseal his wineskin until he reached Athens. Aegeus, not understanding, stopped at Trozen. There, King Pythius, who understood the prophecy, got Aegeus drunk, sent him to his daughter Aethra's bed. That same night, Athena appeared to Aethra in a dream, told her to wade into the sea. There, Poseidon came to her, and from this double conception, Theseus was born, son of both Aegeus and Poseidon, mortal and divine, human and god. Breathe. As the hero grows, strong, brave, clever. When Theseus was young, Aegeus left tokens under a heavy stone, a sword, sandals. If the boy could lift the stone, he was to take the tokens and come to Athens, claim his birthright. Theseus grew strong, lifted the stone, took the tokens. But instead of sailing to Athens, the safe route, he walked along the dangerous coastal road, seeking adventure, seeking to prove himself. He encountered bandits, monsters, men who killed travelers, and he killed them all, using their own methods against them. Procrustes, who stretched or cut travelers to fit his bed. Theseus did the same to him. Siren, who made travelers wash his feet, then kicked them off a cliff. Theseus kicked him instead. When he reached Athens, Aegeus recognized the sword, recognized his son. But Medea was there, the witch, Aegeus's new wife. She knew who Theseus was, feared he would supplant her own son, tried to poison him. But Aegeus realized, knocked the cup away, banished Medea, embraced his son. Feel the embrace, distant, warm, fading. Athens was in trouble. Every 9 years, they had to send 7 youths and 7 maidens to Crete, to King Minos, to be fed to the Minotaur, a monster, half man, half bull, that lived in an impossible maze, the labyrinth, built by Daedalus, so complex that no one who entered could ever escape. This was the price, for an old offense, for the death of Minos' son. Athens had no choice but to comply. Theseus volunteered to be one of the 14, to go to Crete, to face the Minotaur, to end the tribute, or die trying. Aegeus begged him not to, but Theseus was determined. They agreed. If he succeeded, he would change the ship's sails from black to white, so Aegeus would know, from the cliffs of Athens, whether his son lived or died. Rest, as the ship sails, to Crete, to destiny. In Crete, King Minos's daughter, Ariadne, saw Theseus, fell in love. She couldn't bear to see him die. So she gave him a ball of thread, told him, "Tie one end at the entrance to the labyrinth. Unwind it as you go. Then you can follow it back." Theseus entered the maze, walked its twisting corridors, its impossible angles, its madness made stone. Deep in the center, he found the Minotaur, the beast, terrible, tragic, killed by its own father's shame, by Minos's wife's unnatural lust, by Daedalus's genius turned to imprisonment. They fought, in the darkness, in the center of the maze, hero and monster, man and bull. And Theseus prevailed, killed the Minotaur, broke its neck, ended its torment. He followed the thread back, escaped the labyrinth, fled Crete with Ariadne and the saved Athenians, sailing through the night, racing toward freedom. Breathe, as joy turns to sorrow, as triumph becomes tragedy. They stopped at the island of Naxos, to rest, to celebrate. And there, for reasons the stories disagree on, Theseus abandoned Ariadne. Either he forgot her, or Dionysus appeared and claimed her, or he was ordered by Athena, or the truth is lost, like so much. Ariadne woke alone, betrayed, weeping on the shore. But Dionysus did come, did marry her, did make her immortal, did give her joy, eventually, in time, in the way of gods. Theseus sailed on, approached Athens, victorious. He had slain the Minotaur, had saved the children, had proved himself a hero. But in his joy, in his distraction, he forgot to change the sails. The black sails remained, signaling death, signaling failure. Aegeus, watching from the cliffs, saw the black sails, saw what he thought was his son's death, and threw himself from the cliff into the sea that would bear his name, the Aegean, forever. Feel the sorrow, the preventable tragedy, the cruel accident of fate. Theseus returned triumphant, and found his father dead, by his own hand, caused by Theseus's own forgetfulness. The hero became king. But the crown came weighted with guilt, with grief, with the knowledge that his victory had cost him his father. And Poseidon, his divine father, watching from the depths, said nothing, did nothing. The gods did not interfere in such personal tragedies, even for their own children, perhaps especially for their own children. Theseus ruled Athens well, united Attica, made Athens powerful, strong, democratic. He established festivals, built temples, including one to Poseidon, honoring his divine father, ensuring the Earthshaker received his due, even in Athena's city. Rest. As Theseus ages, as his story continues, we could follow him further. His friendship with Pirate, his abduction of Helen as a child, his descent to the underworld, his death. But those are other stories, for other nights, other dreams, sink deeper as we move from heroes to gods, from mortal stories to divine endurance. Poseidon had other loves, other children. The list is long, endless, each one a story. He loved Demeter, his sister, goddess of the harvest, but she rejected him, transformed into a mare to escape his pursuit. Poseidon became a stallion, caught her anyway. From their union came Arion, the immortal horse, fastest creature on earth, could run across water, could speak with human voice, and a daughter, Despoina, the mistress, worshipped in mystery cults in Arcadia, her true name known only to initiates. He loved Scylla, the nymph, but when Amphitrite grew jealous, she poisoned the water where Scylla bathed, transformed her into a monster, 6 dog heads on long necks, 12 dangling legs, forever hungry, forever hunting, stationed in the strait across from Charybdis, the whirlpool. Together they destroyed ships, killed sailors, became a synonym for impossible choices, between Scylla and Charybdis, between 2 evils, both deadly. He loved Libya, daughter of Epiphus. She bore him Belus and Agenor, kings who would found kingdoms, whose children would include Europa, Cadmus, Dido, heroes and founders across the ancient world. So many loves, so many children. Poseidon's bloodline spread across the Mediterranean. Every coastal city, every island kingdom, claimed descent from the Earth-shaker, the sea god's legacy. In flesh and blood and ruling dynasties, breathe as the bloodlines multiply, as the family tree branches, becomes a forest, becomes uncountable. But Poseidon was more than just a lover, more than just a father. He was a force, a power, the ocean personified, and his nature was complex, contradictory, like the sea itself. He could be generous, calm waters for respectful sailors, good fishing for those who honored him, protection for coastal cities that built his temples. He saved drowning men, sometimes, if they prayed, if they deserved it, if he was in the mood. But he could be terrible. Storms that came from nowhere, waves that swallowed ships, earthquakes that destroyed cities, tsunamis that wiped out entire coastlines. His anger was the ocean's anger, impersonal, devastating, unstoppable. The ancient Greeks understood this. They built temples at every port, sacrificed bulls before every voyage, poured wine into the waves, and prayed, constantly, fervently, to the earth-shaker, to the horse-tamer, to the god who held their lives in his hands whenever they touched water. Rest, as we contemplate divine duality, as we accept the uncontrollable nature of power. In many ways, Poseidon represented everything humans feared and needed from nature. The sea gave food, enabled trade, connected civilizations. Without it, Greece would have remained a collection of isolated mountain villages. The sea made Greece possible, but the sea also killed, drowned, destroyed. No matter how skilled the sailor, no matter how well built the ship, the sea could always win, could always take, could always remind mortals of their place. Poseidon embodied this. Was this the god who must be honored, who could never be controlled, who decided, on a whim, on ancient grudges, on passing moods, whether you lived or died? It must have been terrifying to be an ancient Greek sailor, to know that your life depended on the temperament of a god known for holding grudges, for sudden rages, for destructive fury. But it was also strangely comforting, because it meant the ocean wasn't random, wasn't meaningless chaos. It had a will, a personality, and if you could please that personality, if you could win its favor, you might survive, might prosper, might be blessed. Breathe. As we move forward, through time, through transformation, the classical age came, the age of Pericles. Athens reached its height, built the Parthenon, produced Sophocles and Euripides. Socrates walked the agora. Philosophy flourished. Democracy expanded. Art reached perfection. And through it all, Poseidon was honored. The Isthmian Games, held at Corinth, were second only to the Olympics. Chariot races, wrestling, boxing, all dedicated to the Earthshaker. Athletes from across Greece competed, sought glory in his name. Wreaths of wild celery for the victors, fame that would last generations. His temple at Sunion, on the southern tip of Attica, stood gleaming white against the blue sea. Sailors would see it from miles away, would know they were approaching Athens, would give thanks for safe passage, or pray for protection on journeys ahead. The columns still stand, even now, 2,500 years later, facing the eternal sea. But time moved on. Greece fell to Macedon. Alexander conquered the world, died young, his empire fractured. The Hellenistic age began. Greek culture spread to Egypt, to Persia, to India, but also diluted, mixed with other traditions, other gods. Rest. As empires rise and fall, as cultures blend, as the old gives way to the new, Rome came, conquered Greece, took everything. But as the Romans themselves said, captive Greece captured her fierce conqueror. They adopted the Greek gods, renamed them. Poseidon became Neptune, but the essence remained. The sea god, the earth shaker, the wild power of water. Neptune's temple in Rome, massive, magnificent, celebrated the god who protected their navy, who enabled their trade, who made Rome an empire. They held games, the Ludi Neptunalia, in midsummer, when water was scarce, when the sea was most needed, praying for rain, for rivers to flow, for crops to grow. The festivals continued. The sacrifices continued. Rome was pragmatic, practical, but they understood. The sea must be honored. The god must be appeased. Their power depended on it. Breathe. As we approach the great change, the transformation that would reshape the world, Christianity came. Slowly at first, a cult among many, then faster. Constantine's conversion, the Edict of Milan, official tolerance, then official religion. The old gods, declared demons, their temples closed, destroyed, converted to churches. The last Olympic Games, held in 393 CE, then banned. Pagan practices, unacceptable. The temple of Poseidon at Sunion, abandoned. The Parthenon, converted to a church, later a mosque. The old worship, forbidden for 1,000 years. The gods were forgotten, or remembered only as myths, as stories, as literature, not as living presence, not as real power. The medieval world, Christian, built on different foundations, different stories. One God, one truth. The sea still existed, still killed, but now it was God's will, not Poseidon's anger. Natural law, not divine personality, but stories, Stories are resilient. Stories survive. Feel yourself suspended between forgetting and remembering, between death and transformation. The Renaissance came, a rebirth of classical learning, of ancient wisdom. Scholars rediscovered Greek and Roman texts. Artists studied ancient sculptures. Philosophers read Plato and Aristotle again. And the gods returned, not as beings to be worshipped, but as symbols, archetypes, art. Poseidon appeared in paintings, in sculptures, in fountains, the fountain of Neptune in Rome, Bologna, Florence, the god standing triumphant, commanding the waters, surrounded by sea creatures, nymphs, tritons, bronze and marble, permanent, beautiful, celebrating the power and majesty of the sea. No one believed anymore. Not really. Not as the ancients had. But everyone recognized the power of the image, the truth in the myth, that the sea is powerful, dangerous, that it must be respected, that to personify that respect as a god made sense, made the relationship comprehensible, human. Writers invoked him. Shakespeare mentioned him. Milton, poets of every age, used his name, his image, his trident, to represent the ocean, to represent power, to represent the unstoppable force of nature. Breathe, as the god transforms, from being to symbol, from presence to metaphor, from worship to art. The age of exploration, ships sailing to the new world, circumnavigating the globe, mapping the oceans, and on every ship, somewhere, Poseidon's image, not worshipped, but remembered, honored, respected. The god of sailors, even Christian sailors, even those who would never admit it, knew. The sea demanded respect, and what better face for that respect than the ancient god, than Poseidon, than Neptune, than the earth shaker. The scientific revolution came. Newton's laws, Enlightenment rationality. The world became mechanical, understandable, predictable. The gods were explained away. Mythology became just mythology. Stories people told before they knew better, before they understood that the world runs on natural law, not divine whim. And yet, rest as we approach the modern age, as we reach now. The scientists named the 8th planet Neptune, the blue world, the water world, the world of storms and mysteries, fitting for the god of the sea. Even those who didn't believe understood that some names, some stories, are too perfect, too right, to abandon. The poets never stopped writing about him. Byron, Tennyson, Wordsworth. The romantics loved the classical gods, saw in them something lost, something vital, a connection to nature, to mystery, to the numinous that the modern world had sacrificed. Artists continued painting him. Bouguereau's Birth of Venus shows Poseidon and Amphitrite, among others, celebrating Aphrodite's emergence. Rococo and neoclassical painters loved the mythological scenes, the opportunity to paint the human form, divine, perfect, powerful. And in literature, the gods lived on. Keats' Endymion, Tennyson's Ulysses, James Joyce's Ulysses, T.S. Eliot's Wasteland, references, allusions, the old stories, underlying, structuring, giving depth and meaning to modern narratives. Breathe as we reach the present, as we find ourselves here, now, today. In the 21st century, Poseidon endures. perhaps more than ever. Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson, a global phenomenon, introducing millions of children to Greek mythology, making Poseidon a character again, a presence, a personality, not worshipped, but loved, understood, real in the way fictional characters are real. Movies, Percy Jackson, Clash of the Titans, Aquaman. Comics, DC's Aquaman as a Poseidon figure, Marvel's Namor, the archetype of the Sea King, always returns, always resonates. Something about that image, that power, speaks to us. Still, across millennia, video games, God of War, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Immortals, Phoenix Rising, Hades, everyone features Poseidon. Lets players interact with him, fight him, befriend him. The god, active again, in digital spaces, in virtual worlds, alive in a new way. And the ocean endures, unchanged, as powerful, as mysterious, as deadly and generous as ever. Feel the waves, distant, eternal, calling. Scientists now explore the deep sea with submarines, ROVs, finding ecosystems no one imagined. Life in the crushing darkness, in boiling volcanic vents, in frozen methane. The ocean still holds secrets, still exceeds understanding, still inspires awe. Climate scientists warn, the oceans are rising, warming, acidifying. The consequences will reshape civilization, flood cities, displace millions, change everything. The ocean, reminding us that nature is still more powerful than humanity, that we are not in control, that the forces we treated as gods perhaps deserve that respect. When a tsunami strikes, as it did in 2004, in 2011, when hundreds of thousands die, when entire coastlines are reshaped, when the ocean demonstrates its absolute power, its indifference to human life, people still use the old language, calling it an act of God, a natural disaster. But the Greeks would have said, Poseidon's rage, and perhaps, in a way, they weren't wrong. Not that there's a literal God, an actual being, sitting in an underwater palace, deciding to punish, but that to personify, to give human attributes to the ocean's power, helps us relate to it, respect it, fear it, appropriately, breathe deeply, as all the stories, all the ages, all the transformations converge here, now, in this moment. Poseidon teaches us about the relationship between humanity and nature, about power that cannot be controlled, about forces that must be respected, about the need to honor, to sacrifice, to approach with humility the things that can destroy us. In ancient times, this meant literal sacrifice, bulls, wine, prayers. Today, it might mean different things: careful stewardship, sustainable fishing, reducing plastic, fighting climate change, respecting marine ecosystems. The forms change, but the principle remains. The ocean is powerful. The ocean provides. The ocean can take away. We must respect it. And in honoring the ocean, in respecting the sea, we honor, in a way, Poseidon, not as a being, but as an idea, as a representation, as the personification of wild nature, of power beyond human control, of beauty and terror intertwined. Feel yourself dissolving into water, into myth, into the eternal story. The gods never die. Not really. They transform, they adapt, they live in stories, in archetypes, in the collective unconscious. Jung wrote about this. The old gods, becoming aspects of the psyche. Neptune, the animus, the shadow, the deep self. Poseidon is the part of us, that is wild, untamed, powerful, angry, that holds grudges, that loves fiercely, that destroys when crossed, that provides when honored. He is the unconscious, the deep psyche, the parts we don't control, don't understand, but must acknowledge, must respect, must integrate. And he is the ocean, literally, metaphorically, the ocean inside us, 70% water, like the earth itself, tides responding to the moon, currents we don't control, depths we've never explored, mystery at our core. Rest now, let go, let the boundaries dissolve somewhere, in the deepest trenches, in the Marianas, in the Puerto Rico Trench, in places where pressure would crush human bones to powder, where darkness is absolute, where no light from the sun has ever reached. Perhaps there is a palace. Perhaps the Nereids still dance. Perhaps Amphitrite still sits beside her king. Perhaps Poseidon, eternal, unchanged, waits. Or perhaps the palace is metaphor, the god is symbol, the power is natural law, and the story is the point. The story is what endures, what matters, what shapes how we see, how we understand, how we relate to the ocean, to nature, to power, to mystery. Either way, the sea remains, the waves continue, the tides ebb and flow, storms arise and subside, life emerges from the depths, returns to the depths, the cycle, eternal, unstoppable, indifferent to human wishes, human prayers, human needs. And we small, brief, fragile creatures, we stand on the shore, we sail upon the surface, we dive into the shallows, and we tell stories about the god who rules those depths, about Poseidon, earth shaker, horse tamer, lord of the seas, born in darkness, freed to light, warrior against the titans, builder of cities, lover of nymphs, father of heroes and monsters, rival, friend, avenger, provider, destroyer, eternal, unchanging. As the sea itself, let the story end now, let it fade, like a dream upon waking, like foam upon the shore. But know that somewhere the story continues. As long as there are oceans, as long as there are waves, as long as humans sail, and fear, and hope, and pray, the story continues. Thanks for listening, night creatures. Poseidon endures, the sea endures, and you are safe, floating in dark water, rocked by gentle waves, protected, held, supported. Sleep now, deep sleep, final sleep. The story is told, the journey is complete. You have traveled from the beginning to now, from darkness to light, and back to darkness, the peaceful darkness of rest, of dreams, of the deep. Breathe, barely, like the sleeping ocean, like the still water in the deepest trenches, and let go, into darkness, into silence, into the eternal deep, where all stories end, where all journeys finish, where all souls eventually return. The ocean is eternal, and so is rest, the end and the beginning, forever, like the turning tide, like the endless waves, like the eternal sea. Rest well, dream deep. The gods watch over you.